Welcome back. This is week number 2,
Mm-hmm.
day number 2
Mm-hmm.
of our study of First John, Second John, and Third John.
Right.
And so we are thankful that you have joined us again today.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be taking a look at First John chapter 3.
Right. We're
We're
gonna
going to be
close it.
looking at, we'll be closing out chapter number 3,
Mm-hmm.
looking at verses 11 through 24. And we'll break it down into different parts
Right.
as we go through the study. All right. So you want to start reading for us?
All right. So 1 John 3, starting in verse 11. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. Marvel not, brethren, if the world hate you.
You look at these 3 verses, we're seeing a contrast, a,
Yeah.
a very stark contrast, one between what true love is and what a picture of what the world considers love to
Mm-hmm.
be. And so when Cain and Abel, we know the story all the way back into Genesis, where the first murder took place, and
Mm-hmm.
we know that it took place because one was jealous of the other's sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
and he got mad at what God was accepting, and so Cain kills his brother, and so when
Yep.
he does that not because he had a love for his brother, but because he had a hatred for not only his brother, but he also had a disconnect between him and God.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at this here, we see that what John is teaching us, I believe, is that we have to understand what true love
Mm-hmm.
is and what a false
Right.
man-made love could or is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you look at Cain and Abel, they both brought an offering to God
Mm-hmm.
because an offering was what was expected.
That's right. Yes.
And we know that Cain gave because he had to
Mm-hmm.
and not his very best.
Sure. Yeah.
And then Abel gave his best
Mm-hmm.
because he had a love for God,
That's
not
right.
because he had to.
Sure.
So it really starts that beginning of the light from the dark,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
of good and bad. And let's face it, the darkness never likes it when light shines
That's right. That's right.
because it exposes their darkness.
Yep.
And it wasn't so much, I think, that he hated his brother as it was his brother's good, his brother's light shined in on his darkness.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
So it really, sometimes the very hatred we have for someone else or someone has towards us isn't to do with us or
Mm-hmm.
us with them, as it is the exposure of their heart,
Right. Right.
the exposure of the weakness of their heart. And so Cain, because his heart was exposed
Mm-hmm.
for the wickedness that was within it, he killed his brother.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are just like that. We will
Yeah.
hurt others because they are exposing a truth in our own lives that we don't want
Right.
to see.
Right.
And there are others who are not going to like us or
Mm-hmm.
have a hatred towards us,
Yeah.
not really at us, but
Right.
because the light, Jesus, that lives in us exposes their darkness.
That's right. That's right.
And darkness does not like the light. And we talked about
Yep.
that the very first week, about from the very beginning, God
Mm-hmm.
separated darkness and light.
That's right.
And as children of God, we will be exposing that darkness with the light that lives within us around others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I oftentimes say when I preach or either when I'm ministering to people that the attacks that we are exposed to they're not
Right.
personal. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
personal attack. Most of the time, if someone attacks you, it's not you they're attacking. It's the God who lives in
In
you that
you.
they're attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And they may disguise it in ways that looks very personal to you, but you have to
Right.
understand that's that battle between good and evil, light and darkness,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes all the way back to the very beginning with Cain and Abel.
Right.
And so John is telling us here that look, these are things that are still happening even
Mm-hmm.
in the day that he was living, as well as this is a living word, so this applies to us as well.
Right.
Um,
What happened with the very first children?
Yes.
So it's like,
Hmm.
this isn't something new. Don't think that this is something new,
Right.
that the evil's going to come against you. Don't think it's something new that the world hates you,
Yeah.
because from the very first children of Adam and Eve,
Hmm.
Cain and Abel, it
Yeah.
could not live together. There was hatred there. So until the Lord
Hmm.
steps back out and takes us all home,
Yeah.
this is something that's going to be, is the world's going to hate the light that lives within us.
Verse number 11 talks
Mhm.
about, from this, the message that we hear from the very beginning.
Yeah.
He said we should love one another. So this is not a concept that just took place later on in
Mhm.
humanity's history, but it was all the way back to the Cain and Abel situation.
Right.
It's always been God's desire and will that we love one another.
Right.
Now the problem is, sin shows up,
Mhm.
and where sin is, it begins to, when it festers, it'll
Mhm.
cause things that shouldn't be in your life.
Right. And it wasn't that Abel did anything.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything. He had a pure heart to serve
Hmm.
and to follow
Right.
and to obey the Lord.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't that Cain so much had disdain at his
Yeah.
brother for something his brother had done to him,
Hmm.
as it was that he had disdain for the good
That's right.
that was in Abel, because
Yeah.
it made the bad that was in him
So he had to take it out on
shine.
somebody. He couldn't take it out on
Right.
God, so he took it out on his brother.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the world will do the same thing to
That's
us.
right. Yeah.
So we have to we can't, it still hurts when people
Yeah.
attack us, but
Sure
we need to
does.
realize a lot of times it's not the us that they're attacking.
Hmm. Yeah.
And people know when they're not living where they need to be.
Right.
And you'll find a lot of times, especially people who know the truth, but
Mhm.
aren't living in the truth.
Yep.
When you're around them, you'll find that sometimes they're more hostile towards you.
Yeah.
And in that hostility, it's really not them
Mhm.
being hostile at you,
Yeah.
as it is they know they're not where they need to be.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to admit that to themselves. So
Sure.
instead, they just try to put distance between the two of you.
Right. Exactly.
And
right.
that can make it really hard sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's look at 14 through 20.
Okay.
It says, "We know that we have passed from death unto life, because we love the brethren. He that loveth not his brother abideth in death. Whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer, and ye know that no murderer hath eternal life abiding in him. Hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And hereby we know that we are of the truth, and shall assure our hearts before him. For if our heart condemn us, God is greater than our heart, and knoweth all things."
Yeah. Yeah. John starts out with some very
Mhm.
strong language in these few verses here.
Yeah.
If you hate your brother, he calls you a murderer.
Mhm.
Wow, that's pretty stout. I mean,
Right.
and there's a consequence for that,
Mhm.
because he goes on. He says that murderers will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. They'll not have that eternal life
Right.
that's been promised to us. So God
Mhm.
takes hating one another very seriously.
Right.
Now we're living in a generation of people that, well, maybe not just our generation, but we're living. It becomes very evident today that we're seeing a group of people, or a generation of people,
Mhm.
that would rather hate you than try to love you. They're
Right.
always looking for something that they can
Mhm.
pin at you or pin to you. That's
Right.
not loving your neighbor. We all have
No,
faults, every
we
one of
do.
us.
But that's also, if you don't understand that love is God and that
Hmm.
God is love,
Hmm.
then they're trying to tie love to acceptance of their truth.
Yeah.
And if you can't agree with their truth
Hmm.
or whatever they have created,
Yeah.
then therefore you must hate them.
Yeah.
But really, what it's saying about them is what they don't understand. Especially, I hear people say about Christians a lot, is that it's just the hypocrisy.
Hmm.
But what they can't comprehend is it's not us that's loving them.
Right.
because they feel like, well, you don't stand with me, you don't agree with me, you don't get on my side, you won't be like I want you to be, then you must hate me. And they think we must hate them because they hate us.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're filled with so much darkness that they hate us because we
Yeah.
can't agree with them. And to them, it seems ridiculous that we could love them even though we don't agree with them.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they don't understand it's not us and our flesh loving them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the God living in us that allows us to love them even when we don't agree with them, even when they hurt us, even when they call us names or speak untruths. We can still be kind and gentle to them.
Yeah.
But see, to them, that looks like hypocrisy
Sure.
because they're living in the flesh and acting on emotion.
Right.
So therefore, they can't comprehend us. But
yeah.
God also told us the darkness can't comprehend the light.
That's right.
The light was among them and they could not comprehend it.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't think that that makes us special or different.
Yeah.
They're still not going to be able to understand how we can love and how we can do kindness to people who disagree with us, who come at us or against us, or even try to destroy us.
Yeah.
We can still turn around and do a kindness.
Yeah.
We can still pray for them. And
Right.
it's beyond. And I can legitimately say that before I was saved, which was much later in my life, not late, but later in my life, I had lived that space where I thought it was just all hypocrisy because I thought love was hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Because love was just something people used to control you.
Yeah.
Or manipulate you into how they could mistreat you and it be okay.
Yeah.
And then when I gave my life to the Lord, because I understood that no, He was love.
Yeah.
And this
right.
big God of love was not the world and He
Yeah.
was not people.
Right.
And I couldn't associate the two together. And that's
Yeah.
what John is saying here. He's saying you can't say that you've passed from life to death. You can't say that God has brought you from death back into life, and yet you turn around and hate people.
Right.
And yet you turn around and try to tear people apart.
That's murder.
You're murdering people.
Yeah.
Even, we don't like to look at this, but he says we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. We ought to be willing to die.
Sure.
Because we know our death is not true death.
Right.
Our death is a passing to a bigger life.
That's right.
So we should not be afraid of giving and doing and taking care of our brothers and our sisters.
In verse number 13 kind of really just sums it up for me, where it basically is just saying there, it said, look, the world's going to hate you.
Yeah.
Don't marvel at these things. Don't be so taken back when the world hates you.
Right.
If they hated Jesus, what do you think they're going to do to us? But that doesn't mean that their hate toward us has to be reciprocated back to them in that same way. Because when someone hates us, if we can turn that back around and we can show them a godly love, a Christ love, they don't know how to. Most people don't know how to receive that.
Well, that's the biggest thing. They don't. And because they don't know how to do that, they don't think someone else can do that. So then therefore they think that you're trying to be a hypocrite, like you're trying to. They really think you're trying to manipulate them.
Yeah.
When in sincerity, we're just trying to demonstrate the love that God had towards us when we were that exact person they were.
Yeah, that's right.
Our sin might have looked different. Our disgust may have looked different. It may have had a different name than theirs, but we were still in that same spot.
Yeah, that's right.
And God loved us there. And that's the only way we can love them there is because we know how much God loved us when we were in that same spot.
So John brings all these things up about hating your brother and how you can't do those things. But then he goes down in verse number, 16. Read verse number 16 for me one more time.
Hereby perceive we the love of God because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren.
So to me, this right here is the key to all of it. When he says we're to perceive, it means we ought to understand and know that the reason that we can love one another is because Christ loved us first and laid himself down. We were enemies to the cross. But yet, in spite of who we are, Jesus died for those who rejected him. So
Mhm.
if I'm going to live the Christ life, I'm going to live
Yep.
and allow Christ to live in me and through me, then I've got to
Mhm.
understand that when others hate me, that I've got to be different.
Right.
Jesus was different.
Yep.
Jesus didn't go with the status quo and just get on the
Mhm.
bandwagon and say, well, let's just kill them all.
No.
No, Jesus said, I love them. So
Mhm.
therefore, I'm going to die for them. So he
Right.
expects us to be of that same mindset
Mhm.
that regardless of what someone does, and that's easier said than done
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
we can know it all day long,
Right.
but if we're not living it out in the moments,
Mm-hmm.
when that big moment comes, we're going to respond in our flesh
Yes.
in the heat of the moment, and a lot of times it's going to be the wrong way.
I like what you said. We've got to live it out until the moment gets here.
Yeah, every
Because
moment.
it's too late when the moment
Yeah,
gets here to start that
it's too late.
process. You better figure out how to live this out before the moment gets here.
When it's learning, like, even to quiet your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when something's going on, I don't know if guys do this as much as women tend to do this, is having that argument in your head.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you know you're going to see someone again that
Mm-hmm.
you've had a hard time with in the past,
Yeah.
and you start preparing yourself
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to not prepare yourself for the confrontation,
Yeah.
but start praying and preparing yourself on how to love them
In the
even if they
confrontation.
bring confrontation.
Yeah.
Not how will I respond to you,
Right.
not how am I going to react in reaction,
Mm-hmm.
but how am I going to be prepared to just love you anyway.
Right.
How am I going to be prepared to just be Jesus in front of you, regardless of what you bring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not about, as you know, I see posted and flown around here, it's not about matching energies.
Yeah.
It's about being different.
Yeah.
It's about not being this world. It's
That's right.
about not saying, well, if you give it, then I can give it better. It's
Yeah.
saying, I want you to know that regardless of what you give, I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
I want you to understand that even if you, which I would hope someone not, but even if you spit in my face, and I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm still going to give you food if you need it.
Yeah.
It's those things like, but if you're not continually preparing yourselves, if we're not in the Word, if we're not living it out with the people that are easier in our lives, how in the world are we going to live it out with the ones who are completely coming against us?
Absolutely.
Because in that moment, it's too late, because you will
Mhm.
respond in your flesh every time.
You will.
And he tells us not to, in 18, I like it because he says, my little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Most people will know how you feel about them regardless of what you say.
Sure.
Your words will not matter.
That's right. I mean, you ever walked into a room and you just know such and such over in the corner is looking at you a different way. You can just feel something ain't right.
Yeah.
I mean, your body language a lot of times tells the whole truth.
Well, and I've had people that come up and smile and shake my hand, and they have no idea that I already have 5 people who's told me how they've been stabbing me or throwing darts at me.
Yeah.
But they come to my face with smiles and love.
Which is not real love.
Which is not love.
love.
That's why I'm saying. That's why he says it's not what you say. Your heart's going to condemn you.
Yeah.
Because God knows your heart. It's what you're doing regardless. It's what you're doing when no one's looking. It's what you're living out every day before people. And it's also what you're living out when people aren't there.
Exactly right.
And that makes a difference. And we can't be acting like being a super Christian on Sunday is not being a Christian.
No.
Being a Christian is every day, every moment, every second, which we fail at, but we humbly come back before the Lord and ask him to help us to do it better the next day, and to bring him better honor and glory.
Yeah.
But it's our deeds. It's definitely how we live our lives.
Okay. What's our next verses there?
21 through 24.
Okay.
It says, Beloved, if our heart condemn us not, then have we confidence toward God. And whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. And this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, as he gave us commandment. And he that keepeth his commandments dwelleth in him, and he in him. And hereby we know that he abideth in us, by the Spirit which he hath given us.
Okay. So, he kind of switches, not really switches gears, but he just kind of takes it to a different playing field when you look at these last few verses here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really telling us, he said, look, if you really love me, it's going to be because you keep my commandments. And one of my commandments is that you love one another.
Right.
And if you want to be pleasing in the sight of the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that you have to do. If you go before God and you make petition to Him, don't make petition to Him until you are in a right standing with Him to where you can have that kind of conversation. I
Right.
kind of liken that to a parent and child relationship. If the kids come to you and they've been, hellcats all week long, and man, they just been fussing and fighting, ain't done nothing you asked them to do, won't take the trash out, clean the room up, ain't done their homework, but yet they come to you and say, can we go get ice cream? No, you ain't getting no ice cream. You didn't do what I asked you to do all through the week. You ain't getting no ice cream. If you want the ice cream, you got to be in good standing with the Father. That's good right there. I might preach it.
I'm not sure that's exactly it, but I'm
gonna title that one.
I like it.
We'll title it.
Let's get ice
Just
cream.
like it. Yeah, let's get ice cream. But
I added more to all week long. They don't follow or do anything, and then on Friday they want to come to me like, "But Daddy, we love you.
Yeah, well, I love you.
Can we go get ice cream?" And sometimes that's what we want to live our own way. And then when something happens, we want to be like, Father, I love you. I'm praying. I'm doing something good. So will you then reward me and give me what I want?
But you didn't do what you're supposed to do the week before.
But you've done it. You've not talked to Him all week. You've not acknowledged Him. You've not in any way surrendered your life before Him.
It's not our life anymore. If we become a child of the King, that our life doesn't belong to us. It's His life. So when we step outside of the confines of His, His boundaries, then we're essentially taking something that don't belong to us.
If you watch people long enough, as John puts it here, their heart will condemn them.
Yeah.
You don't have to judge them. You don't have to stay on top of them. But through this chapter, he's just repeatedly giving you a heart check. And what I had wrote down really big right here is that when you read this, chapter 3, you have to ask yourself some hard questions and be sincere. Can you honestly say that you love people? Not just the people that love you, but can you honestly say that you love people?
Yeah.
And if you can't say that you honestly love people, or if you ask yourself that question, do I honestly love people? And you start to make any justification. You say, well, yeah, but not. Well, I try to, but any of that, you need to do a heart check right then.
Right.
Because love's not what you say, but it's how you behave.
Exactly.
It's how you respond in every moment of every day. And if we are following and obeying the Lord, then we're going to love people.
Yeah. And
if we're not following and obeying the Lord, John puts it point blank. He says, then the Lord does not live in you. Period. Like I wrote it here, capital letters, period. Like that's the bottom line. If you're living your life your way, how you want, and thinking a little splash or two of Jesus here and there in your life is okay, then you haven't given your life to Christ.
That's right.
If you're doing everything in the world, reading your Bible, studying, praying, going to church, helping the homeless, and you're doing all these things, but you loathe it.
Yeah.
It makes your heart angry to have to do it, but you do it because you know you're supposed to do it. Then the love's not in your heart.
Yeah.
And your heart's condemning you regardless of how many boxes that you check and how many things that you do.
Right.
He said it's deed and truth. So you can do all the great deeds, but if the truth of God's not in your heart, that you love someone because they're God's creation and they're made in His image, therefore we should love them for that alone, regardless of anything else, then we got to do a checkup.
That's right.
We need to look deep and figure out,
absolutely,
is this a surface Christianity, or have I really surrendered what I want and who I am to a loving Father who knows how He created me to be?
That's right. And see, we're not playing tricks on God. God knows.
That's right.
He knows.
Yeah.
We have to be the ones that comes to an understanding of where we are. God
Right.
doesn't have to come to an understanding of that. He already knows.
Yeah.
So he's waiting on us as an individual to be who he's called us to be,
Mm-hmm.
to follow his commandments, love people like he loves them, and live surrendered.
Yeah.
And if we can fall in line with that, our lives can be
Mm-hmm.
full of peace and joy,
Right.
full of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that there's a lot of Christians that are not real happy people, and they're not happy because they've never really been truly set free from some of the things that
They're
have
still counting
bound
on the
them.
world
They're counting on the world to
bring them that.
right, but they've never really been
Mm-mm.
truly set free.
No.
It doesn't mean that they don't have the tools to be set free. It just means that they have not appropriated in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that people, I believe that as Christians get so wrapped up in is their
Mhm.
attitudes, how they treat other people, and it's a big deal to God. Because
Right.
if it wasn't such a big deal to God, He wouldn't have spoke so much about it in the Scriptures.
Mhm.
And John is reminding us of those
Yep.
very things.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got anything else on this?
No, I think that's pretty much it for chapter 3. He's just
Okay.
really making us do a heart check.
Yeah, sure thing. Sure thing. All right, then. So we don't have anything else for chapter number 3. So we will be back in a couple of days, and we'll be picking up in chapter number 4 and going down through 4, and that'll round out your week this week. So thank you so much for joining us for the summer Bible study, and until next time, may God bless you.